Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the Applexus Expert Series. I'm Elizabeth Frattantuno. I'll be your host today. With me is Joe Falui, the Managing Principal for the Quality Engineering Practice at Applexus Technologies. Hey, Joe.
Hey, Elizabeth, how are you? Thank you for having me.
Great. Thanks for being on the program again.
It's my pleasure.
I wanted to just follow up on the last time that we met. And we talked about the kinds of challenges that companies are having around their S4 HANA implementations. We talked about data, and there's a couple of others that you have and I have talked about offline. One is around infrastructure and architecture. Another one is around security. And then the last one is around user adoption. So today I'd like to focus on the infrastructure and security components of that. So can you kind of give us a little more information about what kinds of challenges customers are having with the S4 programs that they're undertaking around those two areas?
Thank you for that question, Elizabeth. You know, in this digital transformation age, it's become extremely important to really consider the architecture of your solution. And particularly with SAP, with the options to go on-prem or go to the cloud, this has really become a major issue that most customers are facing. And the main issue is really not understanding the intricacies or the aspects that this architecture plays in a successful implementation. It's important. And you know, when you think about the flavors that you have in the cloud architecture, you know, you have the single tenant type of scenario, you have the multi-tenant architecture type of scenario. So it becomes extremely important that you understand what are the things that could possibly be affected in your day-to-day SAP S4 operation that you need to focus on. And this becomes a major challenge for a lot of customers because they treat these nuances of architecture as just the same way they would handle any old ways of implementing any ERP or SAP application within an enterprise. So again, it's one area that most customers have a lot of issues. The second part is the security, like you said, right? So when you think about going outside the comfort zone, which I consider the four walls of your network, and you're deploying solutions over the cloud, there's a lot of issues that could come with that, and we've seen customers where they have a couple of weeks after go live, they run into serious vulnerability issues because of the exposures that they have that they didn't really correct because they didn't know that it existed. But it's a huge challenge that customers have when it comes to S4 implementation, and it needs to be addressed very seriously. It needs to be addressed very seriously. So these are the areas that customers have had issues. And again, when you think about the security vulnerability aspect, you think about the data privacy, the sensitivity of the data that you have in your system, and these things are not protected if you're deploying this solution in a way that they're not foolproof secured. So it's really important that customers pay attention. But long story short is that these are the issues that customers have with the security and the architecture part of their S4 implementation.
Elizabeth, you're on mute.
Thanks for that. We hear about security breaches almost every day now. Some companies had a breach, so I completely agree that it's a very, very important topic. So what is Applexus doing to help with that and to help their customers get through the challenges of both the architecture and security on their projects?
Right. Thank you for that question, Elizabeth. Applexus generally, we do quite a lot when it comes to architecture and security from an implementation point of view, but particularly from quality engineering, we do a lot as well. And for us, testing is not as usual when you're testing in the current digital platform that companies have today, right? So you have to consider what sort of testing and how do you test, your data transfer from the network, internal network, over the cloud, into the cloud platform. So you have to think about a lot of those things. So I've been in a project where we had issues where, this is a performance issue, which is also a testing aspect, that the data, the user transactions are extremely slow. And the main issue was that the data going out of the network to the cloud, there was a lot of security checks that the data has to go through. And because of this, the system was not performing at the speed that is expected to perform. So there's certain things like this that will plague your application, whether from a performance standpoint or from a functionality standpoint. So for us, we make sure that we put this at the core of our test plan for any such implementation. We want to make sure that the functionalities are working as they're expected to work, and we also want to ensure that they're performing without any delays as they're expected to perform. So we put this in as part of our test strategy to help customers achieve the desired solution, regardless of whatever infrastructure architecture that they have. And about the security aspect, what we also do here to help customers is, because we know these vulnerabilities do exist, so we just don't overlook them. So we put together a very rigorous plan on how we validate and ensure that the system does not have any sort of exposure. And we have to do this. It's really important that we do it before attacks happen. Otherwise, the system is going to get attacked because the testing is not performed. So we want to make sure that we test and make sure that all of the potential exposures or the potential security threats before any, we test to make sure that any sort of exposures or any sort of threats that could, that could affect the application, we simulate those threats and we test the application thoroughly for security. So these are the things that we do here to help customers with S4 implementation.
Great, thanks for both of those explanations. Certainly a lot to think about, and it sounds like Applexus has figured it out and has a plan to help their customers with it. So I would love to have you come back on the show again, because we have one more area that we want to talk about, and that's user acceptance, which is a very big deal. And as I've said in the past, you only have one time to make a first impression. So getting it right from a user perspective is really important. So Joe, thanks for being on the program, and I will look forward to our next podcast together. Thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll see you on the next program.